Joe, 7th grade. We're working today on fractions, decimals, and percentages for the next 2 days. I have 3 papers that go with this lesson. One is a chart that has all of the old decimal fraction conversions on it that we memorized and did quizzes on and have used a lot that you can continue to use on your homeworks but not on the tests. And then there's 2 homework papers that we're going to do half each. One has an A in the corner, one has a B in the corner. They both have a zigzaggy line drawn through the middle of it. And what we're going to do today on both of those papers is do this top right corner. Anything that's above the line, we're going to do. Anything that's below the line, we are not. We're just working above those lines on those papers. So, first thing we'd have to work on is trying to turn fractions into decimals. So there's one way that will always work. Any fraction can be turned into a decimal if you divide the bottom into the top. Sometimes there's other ways we could do this that are quicker, but that will always work. So I'm going to start on this bottom one as 8/15. So if I want to turn 8/15 into a decimal, I would take 15 and divide that into 8. With the bottom number outside the box, the top number in the box. Add a decimal, add a 0, and then just kind of go at it. 15 into 80 is going to go 5 times eventually. You can figure that out. 5 times 15 is 75. Subtracting gets us a 5. If you get a remainder when you're doing it this way, you have to add a 0 and continue to go again. 15 into 50 is going to go 3 times. 3 times 15 is 45. And we subtract and we get a 5 again. In which case, if you didn't notice, you got a repeat. You might add a 0. You might go 3 again. You might get another 45, get another 5, another 0, another 3. It's going to just keep looping through this same thing over and over again where you get more and more and more 3s. Since the 3 repeats, we'll throw a bar on it. The decimal would go straight up. So this answer would be 0.53 with a bar just on the 3. That technique will always work. You can always divide the bottom into the top on any fraction under the sun. But there are sometimes quicker ways to do that. If you take a look at your chart, 3/4 is on the chart. 3/4 you might still know from your memory that it's 0.75. Now, if you don't trust yourself on a test to do that, you'd have to put 4 out, 3 in, put a decimal, divide, but it would take you there. On the homework, you could use the chart and look it up if it's not in your brain anymore, and maybe that refreshes you by the time you get to the test that there's some in there. 3/5 is on the chart, that's 0.6. 5/8 is on the chart, that is 625. 7/11, you might remember that the odd ones are the ones that repeated a lot. Most of the time when the bottom was odd, there was a bar involved. That wasn't true of the fifths, but it's true of most of the rest. The 11ths were our 9 times tables. 7 times 9 is 63, so that one's 63 with the bar. The 9ths were repeaters also, just a single digit repeat. If this had an 8, this is going to be 8 with the bar, and that's on our chart. 5/7 had that crazy pattern that was 6 digits long before it would repeat. This would go 7, 1, 4, 2, 8, 5 would be the repeat pattern on that. And again, if you don't know the chart, don't remember the chart, can't handle the chart, you can always divide. If you put a 7 out of the box, and you put a 5 in the box, and you divide it, sooner or later it would repeat. It would just be a pretty long division problem before you got to the repeat position. 7/20 we can do by a different technique. This isn't on the chart, but what we can do on this is a thing called the name changer machine is what our book calls it. Other books will talk about equivalent fractions. If you have 100 on the bottom, that's a better number because that's a place value. If you want to turn 20 into 100, we can multiply the bottom by 5. Anytime you do things with fractions, if you change the bottom, you have to change the tops. So if we multiply the bottom by 5, we multiply the top by 35. And if we get 35 hundredths, that's just 0.35 because that's using the hundredths place. If that was confusing to you, don't do that. Take a step over to divide, put the bottom outside, the top inside, put a decimal, put a 0, 20 into 70 is 3, 20 times 3 is 60, subtracting is 10, add a 0 anytime there's anything left, 20 into 100 is 5, decimal goes straight up. You could get the 0.35 by dividing. I just think it's quicker to do the name changer machine sometimes. This is another name changer machine one. 25 can go into 100 4 times. So if I'm going to multiply the bottom by 4, I could multiply the top by 4 to get 32. And this would be 0.32. But if you didn't understand that, go ahead divide. You could always divide. Dividing will always work. This one is longer than it needs to be because I threw on a bunch of bonus zeros. So if you wanted to, I guess, you could put the 8,000 out, you could put the 5 in, but you would need a decimal and you would need 4 zeros before that would be able to go, and that's going to be kind of long. I don't think I would do it that way. What I would do on these ones with zeros is ignore the zeros and focus on 5/8. Just do 5/8. 5/8 we could do by dividing 8 into 5 with a point and an O, or more likely 5/8 was on our chart. 5/8 was 0.65. The only difference between this and this is these extra zeros. So start with the decimal, start with the 3 extra zeros that we have, and then 5/8 was before 625. If you wanted to divide, you still get 625. So I'm going to finish this problem with a 625. 3 4/millionths would be the same thing. Start with a decimal. Start with the 6 zeros that otherwise we can ignore. Anything that has zeros on the bottom like that, the decimal is going to start with that many zeros. 3/4, you could either use the 3/4 as 0.75 from earlier, or as always, if you forget the chart or don't know the chart, 4 into 3 with a point and an O would get you to 75. And that's going to be where most of the work on the homework is. Turning the fractions into decimals is going to be most of the work. If you don't have it on your chart, you might have to do some dividing, and that's going to keep you a little bit busy. Once you have a decimal and you want to make a percentage, that's going to be very quick. If you have a decimal and want a percentage, you just have to take the decimal point and take it right 2 positions. So this decimal goes right 2 positions. We'd have a 75. And we don't write the decimals anymore when they're at the end of the numbers. This decimal, if we go right twice, we create 1 empty space when we move the second time. Empties will get zeros unless there's a bar, and that'll be different. We'll get to that in a second. But if we move twice and make an empty space, fill a 0. This, if we move twice, we're still in the middle of the numbers, so 62.5. This 0.63 really means that it's 6-3, 6-3, 6-3. There's a repeating bunch of 63s. So if we move over 2, it's not just a plain old 63. The way this became a plain old 75, the decimal is still in the middle of a bunch of repeating patterns. So we need a decimal, and we need the 63 to reappear. If one of these columns has the bar, both columns have to have the bar. And the bar has to cover the same amount of stuff. So this is going to have a bar again. We can't have a bar here and not have a bar there. This 0.8 repeating means you have point and then a whole string of 8s. So if you move the decimal over 2, you're going to get 88. There's not a 0 in that empty because it isn't really empty. This is 8s repeating forever. So we get 88, a decimal, and then 8 with a bar. Since this had a bar, this has to have a bar and have the same amount of stuff. This, if I move over 2, I'd have 71. I'd have a decimal. The 4285 is still there. We still need a bar to be there. But again, we need the same amount of digits under the bar. This had 6 things underneath. This only has 4. So we need 2 more. After the 5, the pattern has to loop back to the beginning and pick up the 7 and the 1. Then life gets easier for a bit because there are no bars for a bit. Just go right 2, you get a 35. Go right 2, we get a 32. Go right 2 to eliminate a couple zeros at the beginning. There'd still be 1 0, and then the 625. Same thing here, go right twice. We'd eliminate a couple zeros from the beginning. Now there would be 4 of them left before the 75. And then this has a bar, so it's a little trickier. Again, what this would mean is there's a 5 and then a whole bunch of 3s. So if we move over 2, it's 53, still a decimal, and still that 3 with a bar, because these both have to have the same amount of items under the bar. So that's today. Again, do the sheets A and B, but just above the lines. If it starts with a fraction, make the decimal, and then make a percent. Or if you have the decimal, also make the percent. We want to fill in this whole right edge at the top, and we want to fill in the middle part at the top. We're doing everything on the top. Don't do anything under the line. Both sheets, just do the stuff over the lines. See you later, guys.